Consider the following formula. Which of the following statements is true for this formula? This is a question that's asking us to identify the relationship between two variables within a function. And in this function, we're dealing with squares and square roots. So there's two important things to keep in mind. One, x squared must be greater than or equal to 0 because there are no numbers in math that could be multiplied to itself to get a number that is less than 0 or a negative number. I could square a positive number, I could square a negative number, and I could square 0. All of these would result in either a positive number or in 0. But there is no way to square a number and get a result less than 0 or a negative number. And the other thing to keep in mind is that when you are squaring a number, x can either be positive or x could be negative. Right, as we talked about here, 1 squared would give you a positive result, but also negative 1 squared would give you a positive result. So whenever you take the square root of x squared, you will always get positive x and negative x, or whatever number it would be if there was a number under that radical. So with all of that in mind, let's take a look at our answer choices. A says if x is positive, y must be positive. This is not necessarily true. Let's pick a number that is an easy square root. I'll pick 9. If I were to plug in 9 for x, I'd have the square root of 9 plus 1 equals y. When I take the square root of 9, I would get positive 3 and negative 3. Plus 1 equals y, plus 1 equals y. And I can solve both of these to find my values for y. 3 plus 1 will give me 4, and negative 3 plus 1 will give me negative 2. In this case, y is both positive and negative, not just positive, making A incorrect. B says if x is negative, y is negative. X in this case can never be negative because there is no way to take the square root of a negative number. That does not exist. It's not possible in math. Therefore, B is incorrect. C, if x is greater than 1, y is positive, or excuse me, y is negative. Because of what we just did for answer choice A, I plugged in a number for x that is greater than 1. 9 is greater than 1. Y turned out to be negative, but it also turned out to be positive, so C is also incorrect. That leaves D as our only correct answer by process of elimination, and at that point you can mark D as your correct answer and move on with the rest of the test, but for the sake of the video I will show you why D is correct. D says if x is between 0 and 1, y is positive. So let's plug in 0 for x and 1 for x and see what we get. We'd have the square root of 0 plus 1 equals y, and then we would have the square root of 1 plus 1 equals y. Now notice that the square root of 0 is at the bottom of our range for our first statement, right? X squared must be greater than or equal to 0. So we can't take the square root of a negative number. 0 is as low as we can possibly get. So when we take the square root of 0, we will just get, technically we will get positive and negative 0, but again, there isn't really such a thing as positive and negative 0. We just get 0. Plus 1 equals y, which would just give us 1 equals y. Then in our second equation, the square root of 1 would give us negative 1 plus 1 equals y, and positive 1 plus 1 equals y. When I solve both of these, negative 1 plus 1 equals 0, and 1 plus 1 equals 2. All of these results are either 0 or positive, making D the correct answer. And you'll notice here the reason that this range works, and something you may be able to use to find D as your correct answer without having to do all of this math down here, is that not only is 0 the bottom of the range of what's possible when we're taking the square root of a number, but 1 is the very top of the range before we start getting negative results for y. And the reason for that is because when we take the square root of 1, we get a positive 1 and a negative 1. And negative 1 is the only negative number we can add to 1 that will yield the result of 0. Any other negative number, when we take the square root of 4 and we get negative 2 as one of our options, that plus 1 will give us negative 1. If we were to take the square root of 9, we'll get negative 3 plus 1, which will give us negative 2, so on and so forth. Negative 1 is the last negative number we can add to a positive 1 to get a non-negative result for y. So that is why this range works. From 0 to 1, all of those values, y will be positive, making D our correct answer.